"Get your hands off me." I said, "I am the attending physician." The words came out low and controlled, the kind of controlled that takes years to learn, the kind that means the opposite of calm. "Doctor." Cassandra Owell pressed her badge flat against her chest and stared at the security guard blocking the entrance to the ICU corridor as if she was memorizing his face. She was. The guard, a thick-necked man whose name tag read Briggs, had his arm extended across the doorframe. He hadn't touched her, but the arm was there, a wall of assumption. "Ma'am, visiting hours for this unit don't start until—" "I am not a visitor." Cassandra's voice didn't rise. It got quieter. "I am the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at this hospital. My patient in room 14 is in acute heart failure, and if you do not move your arm in the next 3 seconds, I will make sure the entire board of directors hears about this conversation, word for word." Briggs looked her up and down. What he saw was a black woman in her early 50s, wearing a navy blue fleece pullover, dark wash jeans, and running shoes. No white coat, no lanyard visible. She'd come straight from her Sunday morning run, and hadn't gone home to change because she hadn't had time to go home to change. The call had come while she was still on the trail, with her earbuds in. "I'm gonna need to see some ID," Briggs said. Cassandra reached into the front pocket of her fleece and produced her hospital badge. She held it at eye level. She watched him read it. She watched the information land. She watched him decide, somehow, that it was not enough. "I'll need to call this in," he said. "You do that," Cassandra said. "And while you're calling it in, understand that my patient's ejection fraction is at 22%. She is on a dobutamine drip, and the resident covering her has never managed cardiogenic shock without supervision. So whatever you need to do it fast." She stepped around his arm, walked through the door, and did not look back. The thing about Sunday mornings at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago is that they have a particular kind of quiet that weekday mornings don't. The administrative staff doesn't come in until noon. The C-suite is empty. The corridors smell like floor wax and old coffee, and the fluorescent lights hum at a frequency that has no name, but that every doctor who has ever pulled a weekend call can identify in their sleep. Cassandra Owell had spent 31 years in this building. She had done her residency here. She had done her fellowship here. She had been passed over for department chief twice. Once for a man 14 years her junior who had published 3 fewer papers and had, at the time of his appointment, never successfully completed an off-pump bypass without assistance. She had taken that information and done what she always did with information that should have broken her. She filed it, she noted it, and she kept working. She got the department chief title in the 3rd cycle. She had restructured the entire cardiothoracic program in 4 years. Mortality rates in her unit had dropped by 38%. She had trained 62 residents who now practiced in hospitals across the country. She had received the American Heart Association's highest honor for clinical excellence 2 years running. She was, by every objective measure available, the best cardiothoracic surgeon in the state of Illinois. She was also, on this particular Sunday morning, the woman who had just been stopped by a security guard because she was wearing running shoes and didn't look like what he thought a chief of surgery should look like. This was not the first time. It would, however, be the last. Room 14 was bad. Cassandra could tell before she even looked at the monitors. She could tell from the sound of the ventilator and from the way the resident, a second year named Topher Mills, was standing at the foot of the bed with the posture of someone who had been holding his breath for 40 minutes. "Dr. Owell, thank God." He said it before she was fully through the door. "Talk to me," she said. She decompensated around 6:45. We pushed diuretics. She didn't respond. I titrated up the dobutamine, but her pressure's been unstable. I was about to call for a balloon pump. Hold on that. Cassandra was already at the bedside, looking at the monitor, looking at the patient. A woman in her mid-70s named Althea, who had been admitted 3 days ago for elective valve surgery that had turned complicated. "Get me a fresh echo." She stood there for the next 2 hours and did what she did. The world outside the room did not exist. Briggs and his outstretched arm and his radio and his need to call things in did not exist. Only Althea existed, and the ventilator and the numbers on the screen, and the slow, careful work of bringing someone back from the edge of a cliff they had not asked to stand on. By 9:15, Althea was stable. By 9:40, Cassandra was standing at the nursing station with a cup of coffee she had poured herself from the break room, and a clipboard she was working through methodically, checking every note from the last 18 hours. Briggs found her there. "Dr. Owell," he said. He was using a different voice now, softer, a voice that knew it had miscalculated. "I wanted to come by and apologize for earlier." Cassandra looked up from the clipboard. She studied him with the same clinical attention she gave to echocardiograms. "Thank you, Officer Briggs," she said. She went back to the clipboard. He stood there for a moment, perhaps expecting more. She did not give him more. There was a patient in room 14 who was breathing because of the last 2 hours. There was nothing else she had to say. What she didn't say, what she kept folded inside the front pocket of her fleece alongside her badge, was that she had already decided what the next move was. She had decided it in the 3 seconds she spent in that corridor watching Briggs read her ID and decide to call it in anyway. She had decided it quietly. The way she decided most things that mattered. The story of what happened next cannot be told without first understanding something about the American College of Cardiology's Fitzwilliam Symposium. The Fitzwilliam was not just a conference. It was the conference. 4 days every March at the Waldorf Astoria in Washington, D.C., where the 500 most influential cardiac surgeons, cardiologists, researchers, and administrators in the country gathered to present research, receive awards, compete for grants, in the quiet corners over expensive scotch, determine who would be elevated and who would not. Program directorships changed hands at the Fitzwilliam. In department chair offers were extended at the Fitzwilliam. The guest list for the closing night gala was curated with the kind of care that made Senate subcommittees look casual. This year, the keynote address at the closing gala was being given by the recipient of the Fitzwilliam Lifetime Achievement Medal. The recipient had been announced in January. The symposium was in March. Between January and March, Cassandra Owell's name appeared in every major medical publication in the country because the Lifetime Achievement Medal had never, in the 53-year history of the Fitzwilliam Symposium, been awarded to a black woman. She had known about the award for 3 months. She had told 4 people, her daughter, her department administrator, and 2 colleagues who had written her letters of recommendation. She had not announced it in the hospital. She had not sent a press release. She had not changed anything about how she showed up to work. She had been, on the morning of the incident, wearing exactly what she always wore on Sunday runs, a navy fleece, dark jeans, running shoes. She had simply not mentioned the award to a security guard who had his arm across a door. Back to March. The Waldorf Astoria ballroom on the closing night of the Fitzwilliam Symposium looked the way power always looks when it dresses up to admire itself. Chandeliers, round tables with white linens, a string quartet in the corner, and 600 people in evening wear pretending the small talk was incidental and not, in fact, the entire point. Cassandra arrived in a gown the color of deep burgundy, fitted and floor-length, with a small clutch and her grandmother's earrings, simple gold drops that she had worn to every significant moment in her professional life. She moved through the room with the ease of someone who had been moving through rooms that underestimated her for 31 years and had long since stopped finding it tiring. She stopped to speak with colleagues. She accepted congratulations she had not publicly acknowledged being owed. She ate 2 shrimp from a passing tray and made a note to find the kitchen and tell someone the sauce was excellent. She had been in the room for approximately 45 minutes when she noticed him. He was standing near the bar in a rented tuxedo that was slightly too wide in the shoulders. He was the kind of man who laughed at his own anecdotes before delivering the punchlines, and the 2 people he was speaking to had the polite, slightly glazed expressions of people who had been nodding for longer than the conversation warranted. His name was Dr. Preston Hale. Dr. Preston Hale was the chief of medicine at Mercy General Hospital. He was Cassandra's administrative superior, not her clinical superior. There was no such thing, but the man whose office sat 2 floors above hers and whose signature appeared on her department's budget allocations. He was 61 years old, had published respectably without distinction, and had spent the better part of the last year attempting to restructure the cardiothoracic budget in a way that would have required Cassandra to reduce her surgical team by nurses and a perfusionist. She had blocked it through the board. He had not forgiven her for it. He was also, Cassandra now saw with a particular quality of attention, one of the attendees of the Fitzwilliam Symposium. He had not been invited to the closing gala. The closing gala required a separate invitation extended by the symposium committee. Attendance at the conference did not confer gala access. Hale, she knew, had been angling for a gala invitation for the past 2 years because the Fitzwilliam Gala was where the American College of Cardiology's Governance Committee traditionally scouted candidates for its advisory board. An advisory board seat would look very good for a man who had twice applied for a hospital president position and been passed over both times. He apparently obtained a ticket through someone's +1. He had not seen her yet. She watched him work the room with the energy of a man performing a version of himself he hoped would be convincing. She watched him drop the name of the department he ran. She watched him fail to mention that the department's primary clinical achievement over the last 4 years had been the work of the surgeon whose budget he had tried to cut. Cassandra took a glass of sparkling water from a passing tray and kept watching. Then he turned and saw her. The sequence of his reactions happened quickly, but she caught all of them. Recognition, confusion, and then something that resolved into the particular brand of certainty that belongs to people who have never seriously questioned their own instincts. He crossed the room toward her with a drink in his hand and an expression that was working very hard to seem genial. Dr. Owell. He said it the way people say a name when they are confirming something they find surprising. I didn't realize you'd be here. Preston, she said. This is the gala. He said it carefully as if perhaps she had confused the venue. It is, she said. The closing gala. The invitation-only dinner. He glanced around as if looking for the person responsible for this oversight. Are you here as someone's guest? Cassandra looked at him for a moment. I'm the keynote speaker, she said. The silence that followed lasted approximately 4 seconds. Cassandra counted them. I'm sorry. The keynote address, she said. At the end of the evening. I'm giving it. Hale's face moved through several expressions in quick succession, none of them comfortable. I wasn't aware. I know, Cassandra said simply. She picked up another shrimp from a passing tray. The sauce really is exceptional. You should try it. She moved away before he could find his next sentence. At 8:45, the lights in the ballroom dimmed. The chair of the Fitzwilliam Symposium, a small, precise man named Dr. August Calloway, stepped to the podium. The room settled. 600 people put down their glasses and turned toward the stage. The Fitzwilliam Lifetime Achievement Medal, Dr. Calloway began, is awarded once per year to the individual whose body of clinical work, research, and contribution to the field has most advanced the practice of cardiothoracic medicine in the United States. In 53 years of this symposium, we have awarded this medal to 53 extraordinary physicians. He paused. Tonight, for the first time in the history of this award, we are giving it to a black woman. The applause began before he finished the sentence. Her department at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago has achieved a 38% reduction in surgical mortality under her leadership. She has trained 62 residents, developed 2 procedural innovations that are now standard in cardiothoracic programs across the country, and she has done all of this while fighting at every stage of her career for a seat at tables that were not originally built with her in mind. It is my honor, and the honor of this entire symposium, to present the Fitzwilliam Lifetime Achievement Medal to Dr. Cassandra Owell. The room stood, all 600 people. The applause was the kind that carries physical weight. At a table near the front, Preston Hale stood too. He had to. Everyone was standing. He clapped because everyone was clapping. His face had the color and texture of old chalk. Cassandra walked to the podium. She adjusted the microphone. She looked out at the room, at the colleagues, the researchers, the administrators, the people who had voted for her, and the people who had voted against her, and the people who had once asked her to please hold the elevator. And she felt, for a moment, the full weight of the 31 years that had brought her to this exact position in this exact room. She breathed. Thank you, she said. I want to start with something that happened on a Sunday morning in February. The room was absolutely still. I was called into the hospital during a patient emergency. I came directly from a run. No white coat, no lanyard visible, running shoes. I reached the ICU corridor and was stopped by a security officer who did not believe I was a physician. He read my badge that clearly stated my name and title, and decided to call it in, to verify. Because the person standing in front of him didn't match what he had decided a chief of surgery looked like. There was a murmur through the room. Not surprise exactly. Many of the people in this room had their own version of this story, but the particular sound of recognition. I want to be clear about something, Cassandra continued. The security officer was doing his job. He was also doing something else, something most people do every day without examining it. He was looking at me and seeing someone who needed to prove what I already was. I had my badge. I had my credentials. I had 31 years of practice and a patient in acute distress one corridor away. None of that was visible to him because none of it was what he expected to see. She let that sit. This award is extraordinary, and I am grateful for it beyond what I can adequately say in a ballroom in Washington. But I want us to think tonight about all the physicians who are being stopped in corridors right now. Not metaphorically. Actually stopped, asked to prove what they already are. Turned around at doors they have every right to walk through, because of what they look like, where they went to school, what name is on their badge, whether they can afford a white coat that fits. The room was not just still. It was the particular stillness of people deciding something. Medicine works when it deserves the trust of every patient who walks through its doors, Cassandra said. It only deserves that trust when every physician who has earned a place in this field is actually given that place. No detours, no verification calls, no arm across the door. She looked out over the room one more time. She was not looking at Hale specifically. She was looking at all of them. I am accepting this award on behalf of every physician who has ever had to prove themselves twice to be treated as once, she said. Thank you. The room came to its feet again. In the front section, Preston Hale was standing and clapping with the rest of them. He was a man who understood, in the way that people understand things that have arrived too late to be useful, exactly what had happened and exactly what it meant. The keynote speaker, the Lifetime Achievement Medal, the 38% mortality reduction, the surgical program he had tried to cut, the physician he had looked through for 4 years because his mental model of authority wore a different face. He understood that he had spent the gala he had maneuvered to attend because he wanted an advisory board seat, performing professional camaraderie for a room full of people who had just watched his chief of surgery receive the highest honor in their field, a fact he had not known, had not asked about, and had questioned out loud when he saw her walking toward him in a burgundy gown. He also understood that she had told him she was the keynote speaker, simply and without drama, as if answering a question about the weather. And then she had moved on to compliment the shrimp. The things that followed did not happen the way consequences usually happened in Preston Hale's career, which was to say they did not happen quietly. Cassandra did not file a complaint against Officer Briggs. What she did was request a formal review of the hospital security protocol for identifying clinical staff in emergency response situations. She submitted the request through the Patient Safety Committee, which she chaired. The review was approved within 2 weeks. Briggs was not fired. He was required, along with every security officer in the hospital, to complete an updated credential verification training that Cassandra had helped design. She had written the curriculum herself, partly, and she had made it specific and unglamorous and genuinely useful, which was how she did everything. What happened to Preston Hale happened because of other people. Dr. Calloway, the symposium chair, had been seated at the head table during the gala. He had watched Hale cross the room toward Cassandra. He had seen the conversation, the set of Hale's shoulders, the expression on his face when he asked if she was someone's guest. Calloway had 30 years of reading rooms. He had also read the Mercy General Budget Report that Cassandra had circulated to the symposium's research committee 3 months ago as part of her award nomination package, because the nomination required a description of the nominee's institutional context. He had read about the budget restructuring proposal. He had read between the lines with no difficulty. 2 weeks after the Fitzwilliam Gala, the American College of Cardiology's Governance Committee extended an invitation for an advisory board seat to the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Mercy General Hospital in Chicago. The letter was addressed to Dr. Cassandra Owell. Preston Hale learned about it the way he learned about most things that happened in the cardiothoracic department, from someone else after the fact. He also learned, through channels he preferred not to examine too closely, that 3 members of the hospital board had attended the Fitzwilliam Symposium and had been in the room for the keynote, that 2 of them had had conversations with Cassandra afterward that had lasted considerably longer than small talk, that the board was, in the new fiscal quarter, reviewing the organizational structure of the hospital's surgical division. He did not know what that review would find. He suspected, with the specific dread of a man who has spent years failing to see what was directly in front of him, that it would find quite a lot. On a Wednesday morning in April, Cassandra Owell arrived at Mercy General Hospital in a tailored charcoal blazer, a white silk blouse, and heels that clicked against the lobby tile with the particular authority of someone who had long since stopped needing to announce herself. She badged through the main entrance. The guard at the desk, not Briggs, a different one, looked up and nodded. "Good morning, Dr. Owell." "Good morning," she said, and kept moving. She took the elevator to the 7th floor. She stopped at the nursing station to review the overnight notes on her post-operative patients. She made 2 adjustments to medication orders, checked in with the resident who had been managing her service, and told the night nurse, a woman who had worked the cardiothoracic floor for 19 years, that the unit's documentation had looked exceptionally clean this month. The night nurse smiled the smile of someone who has been doing excellent work in a room full of people who don't always notice. "Thank you, doctor," she said. Cassandra went to her office. On her desk was the formal letter from the American College of Cardiology, which she had already received by email, but which had arrived in physical form on heavy cream paper with an embossed seal, because some things still preferred to be real in the way that you could hold. She set it on the corner of her desk. She poured herself coffee. She sat down and opened the research paper she had been working on for the past 6 months. A study on outcomes disparities in cardiothoracic surgery across patient demographics. And she picked up her pen and went back to the work. There was still a great deal of it left to do. There always was. That was not a complaint. That was the point. Outside her window, Chicago was doing what Chicago does in April, refusing to commit to spring, throwing cold rain at the glass, being exactly itself. Inside the room, the coffee was hot and the paper was good, and Dr. Cassandra Owell was exactly where she had always been headed, doing exactly what she had always done, with 31 years of proof that the doors that made her prove herself had only ever opened, in the end, into rooms that needed her far more than she needed their permission to enter.